Thank you guys for joining us today on Elation Podcast. We are with Mac Phipps. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good. How you doing?
Good, man. Good to see you.
Same, same.
How you been?
I don't know. No, I'm good. I'm
You
good.
good, huh?
Yeah,
you
just
good,
been
man. You know,
adjusting.
just watching. Yeah, Justin, man. And we're gonna touch on this a little bit later, but I just gonna give you your flowers quickly from me, whether it means nothing or not. But I just want to say, man, on a transition period from you coming home to being normal and into life,
Right.
I am so blown away by how easy you make it look, because
Me
I
too.
know it can't be easy, and
Definitely
you
not.
you blow me away with the just the amount of humbleness and the amount of thought process you take with life and where you picture yourself in the future. It just, to me, it's like it blows me away, because man, you could do a lot of thinking on the negative side where you
Right,
were.
right. And Dave, I appreciate that, number one. Secondly, I don't take no credit for that. No credit for that. That's just good parenting. That's a big shout out to my parents. They instilled some things in all of their kids, and I was the oldest. And they stuck with me, and I try to keep them with me, and that's what carried me through my life.
Man, it's crazy what good parents will teach you character wise. I
Yeah.
mean, and what a good character will bring you through.
Right.
So because you definitely went through it, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But why don't you tell us a little about where you're from, where your school? Let's rep a little bit of the origin story.
All right. So the weird thing is, it's a complicated story. So I was born and raised, raised rather, in what I call Uptown, and what many call Uptown, but I don't know if it's actually Central City or not, but in New Orleans, we just call what we want to call, everything. So,
Right,
I'm from a ward that's, I think, technically the 12th ward, but we claim the 3rd ward, so it really don't matter. We just kind of do what we want to do. It's sort of like the CJ Pete is
right.
the Magnolia.
Right.
You just call it what you want. That's what we do Uptown.
Right.
So,
well, it's also the era that you grew up in too, because it kind of changes a little bit, right?
Yeah. So, that's where I'm from. I went to high school, 2 different high schools. I went to Forshey, which is Uptown, and then we moved to the 7th Ward, and I went to John Mack, and I graduated from John McDonald in 1995.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I heard you went to school with some bigger people in the industry that, like, that kind of do the same things. Like, I heard you went to school with Juvenile.
Yeah, well, me and Juvenile went to Forshey together.
Okay.
The first school I was at, we went to Forshey. I think Juvie was in the band, if I'm not mistaken, at that time. Yeah. So,
do you know what he played?
I can't remember. I know his cousin. I don't know if it was his cousin or his uncle was the leader of the. He was the band instructor.
Okay.
Yeah. So the school is now named after him.
Oh, all right.
The band instructor.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right. The school is now named after him.
Were you and Juvie friends back then?
Yeah, we was cool. We was cordial. Cool? Yeah, we were. I would say we were associates. We knew mutual people, and we was cool.
I got you. What was he like back then?
It was cool.
It was cool.
Juvie was, high school, into the band. He was like one of them band heads. The band head guys. They was into the band and just into, the girls.
Music geeks, in a sense.
And Juvie always been a fly cat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when did you start wanting to rap?
So rap for me started in 1984. I was about 7 years old. I remember back then I only had a few people that I can reference, you know what I mean? You had like the Sugar Hill Gang was out, of course.
Right.
You had Run DMC, I think, had just come out around that time. There were groups like the Gucci Crew. You had UTFO, stuff like that. So that was that era. And I heard, I'll never forget hearing Mr. Telephone Man by New Edition. And at the end of the song, Ralph does a little rap. And he's like, Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike. And I'm like, I can't sing, but I could do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that was it. From there, I just fell in love with hip hop.
Did you start writing right away, or how did that?
Started writing right away. Wrote my first song. I started getting in talent shows when I was like 8, And
Wow.
it just became a
That's
passion of
crazy,
mine
man. That's
early.
natural ability.
So I think by the time I was 9 years old, I think I had done figured out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life at 9 years old.
That's
And I know that
crazy.
sounds insane, but I was just that stubborn. You got to
Right.
keep in mind, it wasn't any knowledge or anything. It wasn't any, I would say, confidence or no. It was just stubbornness.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted to do, and I had the audacity to do it.
Well, you know what, man, like, and that goes back to a character thing, if you ask me. Like, you could figure out who you wanted to be and you were going to stand on it, you know?
Yeah, that's where the stubbornness came in. That's
Yeah.
probably the part that my parents probably wanted to kick my butt sometimes. Because once I lock in on a certain thing that I want to
that
do,
was it, huh?
it's like, it ain't make no sense to talk to me about it.
Yeah.
No, don't do nothing. Just let me go through it because I'm going to do it.
Yeah, well, but that's what, you know, as an adult, I mean, that's what you get you through
Right.
all of the crap that you deal with. I mean,
Of course.
you know, like, you got that stubbornness is what gets you through those waters that you're like, man, I just can't be here.
It reveals your boundaries.
Yeah,
It's like he's not going to take this. He's
Right.
not going to take that.
Right.
He's going to stand on this.
Right.
It's what we call stubbornness. The youngsters call it now standing on business. Whatever the hell that
Whatever
means.
the hell that means. But yeah,
I'm stand on business.
Yeah. Well, you know, you've been standing for a long time.
Like, you got a business? Spell business.
Well, so I know you signed your first deal when you were young too. When was that?
So like as I was saying, I started getting the talent shows and stuff like that. So my uncle was good friends with some guys in the neighborhood, and he just they had a record out at the time, and this was some guys called the Ninja Crew, which consisted of Sporty T, who is dead, rest in peace to Sporty, and the other rapper with the group was Gregory D.
Okay.
Who was from New Orleans. So they were from the neighborhood, and they actually had a song out. So like 86, I'm about 9, and they had a record out. So just imagine in 1986, hip hop is in its early stages.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a group from New Orleans that have a song on the radio. So that in itself was like, okay, this can be done. Right. So and the guys who did it just so happened to be two of my uncle's partners.
Wow.
So I see these guys every day. They're in and out of my grandmother's house. They playing basketball in the neighborhood. So I'm like, all right, cool. I start taking it serious, getting in talent shows, doing this. And my uncle went to them and was like, man, I need y'all to hear my nephew. So he heard me. And by then, I hadn't started a group in the neighborhood. So they heard all of us rap. And then Gregory D was like, Lil Mac, when if I ever get an opportunity, man, I'm gonna come back and get you. And I'm like, cool. So I think the following year I did a talent show, a citywide talent show. I think it was at Dilla or Delgado. It starts with a D. Whatever the place is, I just couldn't remember.
Right. Yeah,
I can't remember which one it was.
It's been a while.
Yeah, America, I'm old. I'm trying to figure out why I still got gray hair. So I did a talent show. I grabbed 3 of my partners. We wrote a song. It was a rapping about HIV or drugs contest. We joined it. The prize was like $500. I wanted that $500, and I won. So
what'd you rap about?
Huh?
What'd you talk about?
HIV and drugs.
Both. Yeah, I thought we had to pick either one.
Yeah, well, you had to. You can do either or, but I just did both.
Oh, you did both.
Yeah, we had a whole routine about both, and we won. And I mean, I just had to say so myself. We were far more advanced than the other people that were in it, and we actually had our own tracks and everything. We had from my cousin Wiz found the producer to do our beat, and we got in the talent show. We won. So while we were, I would later find out that the guy who made the decision to sign me to the label was in the audience, so he was there, and he talked to Greg and them about me, and yeah, so I won the contest. And not long after, I signed a record deal with
That's crazy.
With 2 Hype Productions, which was Gregory D and a locally known DJ at the time from the 7th Ward, who is now the legendary Manny Fresh.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's who I signed my first record deal with. And I began recording at Manny's mama house in the 7th Ward, in the scatter sites. We in the hood. We talking about the trenches. Manny had a room, it probably was the size of this little green room space. They had a
Mm-hmm.
bed and nothing but music equipment everywhere in there. And so we was in there day in and day out recording the project. And Manny is who helped me structure songs. Because
Okay.
before I just was writing long, just my
Freestyles, right.
raps didn't end.
Right.
And Manny was like, no, Lil Mac, you gotta have 16 bars here, you gotta have an 8-bar chorus. And he kind of taught me how to structure the songs.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
You know, those trenches days, man. There's nothing that brings those back. Those memories are really entrenched and what kind of forms you a little
Oh
bit.
yeah. And Manny was a sneakerhead. Like he literally had this room had nothing but a bed, bunch of music equipment, and a barrel full of sneakers. Like they had a barrel in the room full of sneakers. Yeah. And I would never, that was the first person I ever met that had like probably over 200 pairs of sneakers way back then.
Way back then.
Yeah,
Right.
man.
That's awesome. Well, so, and I know, you know, and we'll talk about Master P in a minute. So you kind of had both sides.
Yeah.
In a sense.
In
I mean,
that sense,
before Manny had Cash Money, you were with Manny.
Right.
Was there a difference in production that you could point out between that side and when you ended up on No Limit?
I think that they both were distinctive. I think Manny's sound was more catered to the New Orleans club / bounce audience.
Mhm.
I think that I can't say it was catered to them. He actually tailor-made that sound.
That sound, right.
Like that sound that Manny done eventually became the New Orleans club /
Right.
bounce sound.
Right.
So, and Manny was a DJ who had a very distinctive way of mixing, and all of that came out in his music. So the No Limit sound, I think the anchor, I would say, of the No Limit sound would probably be KLC.
Right.
And KLC was likewise a DJ who was doing his thing uptown, and he was also a band head. So KL's sound, I think, was more catered towards
musical,
the snare section
right.
of the band.
Right.
Yeah. He always had like those drum rolls in there. So that's where I think the distinction came about.
I got you. Well, that definitely makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And a lot of stuff that P and y'all did was very musical at the beginning. Like some of those intros were very musical.
Yeah.
Very orchestral, you know?
And I think back then, hip hop probably was more melodic.
Well, because it took from those spaces.
Yeah.
Like it didn't just create hip hop off of two chords. Like hip hop created off of bringing other sounds in and making it hip hop.
Right.
So there was a lot of musical melodies and notes that they hit that they enjoyed flipping.
Right.
You know? So I definitely believe it was very more musical back then.
Yeah, and I think that gives it more freedom. Just being able to move around, to take pieces of this, pieces of that, pieces of this, and putting it together and just creating something that
because your voice in the end is just an instrument.
Right.
So if it fits right, it fits right.
It fits right.
You know?
That's true.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you and Master P met. How did that whole situation happen?
Man, it's probably a list of people that led to what eventually would become my signing with Master P. But I think the first person that I would give credit for even mentioning Master P to me was my cousin Skanu, who was part of the rap group Prime Suspects at No Limit, who is now deceased, and rest in peace to Skanu.
Right.
His rap name was New Nine, and he actually played in I'm Bout It as Half Pint.
Okay.
So I remember he came to me on the basketball court. He was like, "Cuz, man, I want you to. I've been messing with my partner C, cause he brought C Murder around there, and that's how I met C playing basketball."
Gotcha.
He was like, "Man, his brother got the record label. Man, I know you're doing the rap thing." And at the time, I was listening to him, but I was so into the East Coast sound that I wasn't even really. Thinking about that. I was like, "Nah, I'm good." I'm listening to him,
right?
But I'm like, it's not really my fit. So I thought, right? So at that same time, that's why I say it's a list of people. Around that same time, I started hanging with David and Danny, which is Cain and Abel.
Yep.
Around that time, I was hanging with them and going to their apartment in Xavier where they had their music equipment there, and they was working on stuff while they were going to Xavier. And at the time, they called themselves Double Vision.
Okay.
So I was running with them around that same time, and so they wound up signing with Master P, and then asking me to get on the song. The song that I did with them, and I think it was the first song that I did with a No Limit artist, was called God and Guns. It was on the Cain and Abel's Seven Sins album.
I remember
And so
that song.
we
I
did the
remember
song.
that song.
We did the song, and get this. This is why I signed with Master P. Mind you, I had been in the music business since, at that time, when I met Master P in 97, I had been in the music business since 88, 89, so it was almost 9 years, 10 years, and I never got paid. He paid me for that verse. And I was like, yo, all right, this is something different. Like, I can actually get a check from doing this, right? And I think that was part of the determining factor when the offer was made to me. So KL and Mia, unbeknownst to me, had already been telling P, like, yo, you need to check out this cat. He's going to give us a different sound. He's going to, he's a different artist or whatnot, and he'll be somebody that can compete with some of these East Coast artists. And so I went to the Gavin Music Convention when it was down here. DJ Wild Wayne had a meeting set up with me and Kevin Lyles, who is now the head of 300, the Young Thugs for the people. So Kevin Lyles at the time was working for Def Jam. I went to Kevin Lyles' room. I spit for him. I played my demo, and he liked it. He loved it. He enjoyed it. He was interested. He was telling me that, man, if maybe you need to come out there to New York. And I was like, man, I got to think about that, because when I left, I'm like, man, I'm 19, and I was conscious enough to know that I knew artists that had records out that wasn't making no money. And it's like, I go way out here to New York, and I don't make no money. I'm stuck in New York. I don't know anybody out here.
Right.
All right, cool. So I left out of that room. I shook his hand on a positive note, like, man, I'm we both amicably left. Me and Wayne left out the room, got on the elevator. Master P, Mia, KL, all of them was on the elevator.
Oh, no.
P was like, man, we got a party upstairs. Come upstairs. So I go upstairs to the party. P like, man, come to the studio Thursday with KL. I ain't never come back home.
Yep.
So that's how that happened. I went to the studio that Thursday, and I did like 3 songs in one night. It was, I remember them vividly. One called Trying to Do Something with Fiend on the Ghetto Dope album. One called We Riders.
I remember the Try to Do Something.
Yeah, so We Riders, Trying to Do Something, and Only Time Will Tell. Nigga, we did all them songs like one night.
What?
Come there that night, did them songs. I was hungry. I just made it in the studio. I'm ready to roll. I did them 3 that night. And that's what started everything.
But that's crazy. You just mentioned those 3 because that was a big part of my life growing up. Like those,
them 3, yeah.
Like those 3 were definitely a big part of what I played on, and those are like for me those were like first, your first car, like
that was good knock. That was good for your knock.
I had my 312s and my Alpine, and
trying to do something was definitely gonna get the girls' attention.
Yeah.
You ride by, that's gonna get the girls' attention.
100%, man. No, so it's crazy. That's nuts.
If you want to scare somebody, you ride by. If you want me, come get me. Tell me how you gonna take. That was gonna scam.
We riders. No, and what's funny is actually. The bass on Rewriters used to rock my speakers so bad that they would vibrate off of the bookshelf.
Yeah, you gotta blame KL.
Yeah.
KL had a Suburban. I never forget it. The only way I could describe this Suburban was a speaker itself. Right? So I hated getting in this Suburban because this dude has so many speakers in here, and he used to listen to it so loud. I'm surprised KLC is not deaf right now. He should have no more eardrums right now. And yeah, we used to get in there, and that was one of the songs. He
yeah. Dude, like, that bass in that song was crazy.
Hell no.
Well, so I know it took a long time from that first album that you put out to the album that you put out with Master P.
Right.
What were you doing in between time?
I was doing projects. They just never really reached up beyond the city. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I did right after I left the record deal with Yo Records is who I did the first project with in '89. Manny was trying to find a deal for me, my cousin Wiz, and my DJ Wop, rest in peace. So we started a group called Three Flavors.
Mm-hmm.
And we had more of a straight up Tribe Called Quest type / Southern hardcore, yeah, like around that. So we were doing that type of sound, and it was dope. We just never could. I guess down here it was hard to find. It was hard to market that in this region. It was
Right.
hard to market. I think if we would have been in New York, we'd have been straight. But it was just hard to market that sound in this region because by then, bounce music was sweeping across New Orleans, and if you wasn't bouncing, nobody was
Nobody
gonna really hear
listening.
you. So we did that. After that, I hooked up with my homegirl Storm, and we started a group. We signed with a record label called Ionic Records at the time. So this is around 94, 95. I'm a senior in high school, going to the studio. It was a nice studio. The state-of-the-art studio was on top of Canal Place.
Mm-hmm.
And we went, we was recording there. We released a single called Mad or Jealous. And they were trying to, once again, I found myself in a situation where some people were trying to market our type of hip hop in a region that really wasn't ready for it. Because me and Storm was like a more hardcore version of Diggable Planets.
Gotcha.
It was, I just don't think it was, they were ready for it. And at the same time, I'm doing collaborations with the Psycho Ward with my crew. And Psycho Ward were pretty much having the same issue that me and Storm was having because Psycho Ward was like the New Orleans version of Wu-Tang.
Gotcha.
So it was just kind of hard to market that in this region.
Right.
And so I was doing projects. It's just they wasn't scratching the surface. But one opportunity came in '96 where the studio that me and Storm recorded at was Ionic Records, and we were actually on the label. I had my own pre-production room in there, so I used to leave school and just go in there and work on beats and stuff, right? So while I'm in there one day, Cash Money was in there. They had blocked out studio time at that particular studio to do BG's Chopper City album.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been knowing BG since he was like 6, like
Right.
5 or 6, like 6 or 7 years old. So when I was in my room working on a beat, he'd come in there while they was working on Chopper City, and he was like, Mac, I want you to hear this beat Fresh got, man. And I'm like, all right. So I go in there, he said, I want you to spit something. So we wind up doing a song together called Niggas in Trouble on Chopper City, on the first Chopper City. And so that was an opportunity that for me to get my voice heard outside of New Orleans, at that time. So that was probably the first time outside of New Orleans that people knew
Started
that,
to hear
this
you.
dude here.
Okay.
He can rap. So ran with BG for a hot second. I guess flirted with the idea of signing with Cash Money, but I just felt that at the time nobody knew how to market what I did.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think it was just hard to market that in the city that was so into bounce at the time.
Well, it's funny because you say that because I feel like Cash Money definitely has a pigeonhole in a sense of what they can market. Because, Jacquees is a great artist and he's out, but he's not out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he's not the Drake. He's not the. There's a weird thing with Cash Money. I feel like where they can't necessarily do different artists, in my opinion. They have to kind of do the pop artist.
Right. I totally understand that perspective, but I don't know if it's
because Jacquees is really R&B.
Right.
And Drake is that pop. And
right.
And I know that's Young Money, but it's still the same wheel.
Right. And I think that I don't know if it's a can't thing or is it this is what works. So we're sticking to, you know what I mean? And I understand, when you have a formula that's working,
you keep to it.
You keep to it. It's like when I got with No Limit, I just watched. Because remember, I had been doing it so long, and I knew what the issue was with my style. So I was like, man, everywhere I go, it's like people really don't know how to market what I do. So when I got to No Limit, I just became a student. I just studied what they were doing. I looked at how they were doing it, and I thought, okay, now I'm about to take what I do, and I'm about to compress it into this mold of what I see them doing, because I'm a company man. If this is what's working and this formula was working,
Right, I'm gonna go with
let's
it.
roll with it.
Right.
So that's what nobody told me. I wasn't pressured to do that.
Well, so I was gonna
Nothing.
ask you because a lot of people say P like massages the way that you're supposed to rap or be on a track.
Well, I don't even think he knew how to tell me that, because I think he knew that when he was signing me, I was something totally left field.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So
All
I don't really think that he even knew how to do that with me.
I got you.
If that's even, a thing.
Yeah, well,
I just think that with me, it was like I come there, I paid attention to what was working, and I was like, it don't make no sense to rewrite the wheel.
right.
Remake the
no,
wheel.
No, you got to keep it rolling.
I'm seeing these things spitting out, and this amount of money keeps coming out of them.
And the check's coming.
Yeah, let me go into that
and
mold.
we'll go right into that mold.
Yeah.
Well, tell me how the big song came to be. I can tell.
Oh, I can tell. I can tell it was crazy, because I can tell it wasn't even.
I mean, because we were all bumping it at Sock Hops. I mean, that was our jam.
Yeah, and what's crazy is let me say this as well. I didn't understand the success of I Can Tell until I got out of prison, right? Because I got locked up right after that was released. And the weird thing is, it wasn't written for me. Like, I put that song together for Mercedes' album.
Right.
And that was just something I won't say I threw it together, because throwing it together would be like I didn't care about her project. No, but it was something that we done on a whim, just quick.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
It was just like, all right, we need to come up with
In
something.
the vibe, yep.
And okay, Carlos played the beat. I'm listening. Me and my boy J both sitting right there. So I thought of the chorus. I'm like, G, sing this. And he went, you ain't got to say too much. I said, let's go. We went in there, and the rap was fast, wrote that fast. And I didn't really know what, I never even got a chance to perform that before I got locked up.
That's crazy,
so
bro.
I'm in prison. This is how I knew what it done, or how big it become. I had officers come up to me, and they're like, yo, I just want to tell you that I made my first child
off of that
listening
song.
to this song. And I was like, you serious? Like, yeah. But I didn't know. I'm in prison, so I had no idea what that stuff was doing on the streets. And so, yeah, when I got out, and I remember my first time doing it in concert, and I just looked at the crowd, and I was like, this is insane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That song was huge, bro. I mean,
that's crazy.
It was. I mean, there wasn't anybody that wasn't listening to it in my era growing up. I mean, and so it's just crazy that you didn't get to feel that, And so, I mean, I guess we could talk a little bit about that now, because that's where we're at. I mean, I did want to ask you, what was your favorite group being a part of, that 504 Boys or the Psycho Ward? But
the favorite being a part of. I don't know if I had a particular favorite. I just think that both of them represented two different eras in my life, and two different times, and two different aspects of my personality. I think that Psycho Ward definitely represents the more creative, the more passionate about hip hop side. You know what I mean? They represent that, because a lot of those brothers, we banded because of our love for the music and our passion for it. Whereas the 504 Boys represent the hustle.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's also a part of my personality as well.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? I just think that they represent two different parts
sides.
of my
so yeah,
my
okay. All right, well, that makes sense. But let's talk a little bit about, because you already kind of tipped on the. I was actually going to ask you if you were shell shocked about the Billboard 200 chart for your album and the national success that it got.
Well, shell shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, when shell shock hit the streets, man.
Because it got some national attention.
Yeah, I was 20. Mind you, shell shock was recorded in 1997 and 98. It was released in 1998. So I was 20 going on 21 years old. It was released right before my 21st birthday. And I think shell shock was just me telling the world I'm here and I ain't going nowhere. So that's when I look at that time, I was bold, I was wild, I was in your face. It was just me saying that, yo, I'm in this rap game to stay. and I want y'all to be on notice that I want to be the best rapper in the world. And that was my mentality. And Shell Shock was just a result of that feeling. At that time, I was new, and that was just me kicking in the door saying, I'm here. The success that it got, it didn't surprise me. I wanted it to go further. In fact, I was feeling like it wasn't pushed enough, because I felt that if it was pushed enough, it would have went further, because I just believed in what we done. I believed in all of the songs that we put together, because I think I covered all of the aspects of my personality and probably the average guy in the hood personality at that time.
Well, do you think they didn't push it enough because they had so many artists on there?
It could have been, but it just was.
I mean, it had so many albums.
Yeah, we had so many albums.
Dude, it was nuts.
It was kind of like, by the time they started doing this thing, we put another album out 2 weeks later.
It's like
we literally put an album out every 2 weeks in
1998. I had no more room of posters. Like I couldn't do it anymore. There was no more room.
That was insane.
It was definitely crazy years.
But it was good to know that, it touched people. I just was like, I was ready to get out there and bring it to the world. My favorite track on Shell Shock was probably, it had to be the track KL did for Murder Murder. As far as the beat, just strictly beat. My favorite song on Shell Shock is Shell Shock, it's Slow You Roll.
Okay.
But Murder Murder was my favorite beat, because the way it came about, me and KL were riding in his Suburban, and that fucking loud ass Suburban. Excuse my language, America.
Nah, and listen, those loud ass speakers mean something. They make you feel different shit.
Yeah, so we were in that Suburban, and we were listening to, because KL was a Method Man fan, right? And so we were in KL's car listening to The Riddler. It was a song by Method Man on the Batman Returns soundtrack.
Yep.
So we listened, that's how far back that go, on the Batman Returns, because we was riding around listening to it. And right after The Riddler, or right before it, came a song by somebody, but the name of it was, all I remember is the lady singing, anytime the hunter get captured by the game, ba-boom, boom, ba-boom, boom, ba-boom, boom. I said, I want it, Kel. That right there, I need you to sample that right now. And we went to the studio, he sampled that, ba-boom, boom. And by the time he got his hands on it, it was bum, bum, bum. And I was like, yeah, that's it. That was my favorite track on Shell.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, yeah, you got to be your creative side on that. That's why. Let's talk a little bit about some serious stuff. Let's talk about the night that changed your life.
This was February 20th, 2000, this particular night. I just made it back in town. I was on tour. So now I need to go step over here, because I see my brother. Before I could take one step, I hear, pow! And then I did the dumbest thing. I did what changed my life.
That was it for part 1 on the Elation Podcast. Mac Phipps. Join us later for part 2.